run through of what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to spend about 45 minutes talking about like press. This is like just like the real basics, like what makes news, how do we communicate stories, how do we design stories to appeal to journalists. Then we'll take a 20-minute break after that. We'll do some breakout work here, kind of working on a few examples of stories that we could create and like expanding that, so we can think like how can we put that into practice when we go back to uni. 20-minute break there. And we'll do about half an hour on social media. It's great, we've got Jess here as well, and you'll be able to correct me and help me on a lot of things as well. And we'll do a 15-minute break before ending on a really cool interactive session on like live media spokes, which is also really applicable to like the outreach when you're speaking to people as well. Finish that off with going to Greg House and doing some mock interviews. I've got a bunch of like scenarios you can just pick and choose from to see which one you want to do. So can I ask you to be a scribe, Jess? Yeah. So, first question is a very basic one: is what makes news news? Please just shout at me. Anyone want to guess?
Provocative.
Sorry?
Something provocative.
So something provocative, like controversy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Anything else?
Something unique.
Something unique. Yeah, something someone's never seen before. The easiest way to know what makes news news is literally in the name. News. So I think, did you have one?
I wanted to say it has to be bound to now.
Yes. Yeah, something time bound. Like no one cares about what happened 6 months ago. They care about what happened yesterday. Yeah.
Relevant.
Relevance. Yes, exactly. No one in the UK cares about something happening in Austria. And on a smaller level, no one in Vienna cares about what's happening in Salzburg, probably because of a superiority complex in that case. Things that impact a lot of people. That's like, if something impacts, like 50% of the population, then there's a demand for it in the media as well. Another one is if it involves a famous person as well, someone who people care about. That's why we've done an open letter in the past, and we always lead when we go into the press with the most famous people who've signed the open letter. You don't lead with the least famous person who signed the open letter. Cool. So all of these things kind of come together. Like these are the things we should be having in mind when we're thinking like, I want to be in the media. I want to be news. I want to use that for my campaign. Now, we can move from that into like the real nitty-gritty details of like what makes a story when it kind of starts to come to answer your point I have. The first thing about making a story, is simplicity. There's this philosophical principle. I'm going to go a bit nerdy here. It's about logical arguments. It's called Occam's razor. Has anyone ever heard of that? Occam's razor. Yes. Anyone want to tell me what Occam's razor is? Maybe. Did you have a hand?
I've heard about it.
You've heard about it?
But I couldn't explain it
Cool.
that well.
Yes, here we go.
Always assume the simplest explanation for a phenomenon.
Exactly. The less steps in something, the better it is. So if we've got a story, our job is to boil it down into the simplest possible form, so we don't have to explain to a journalist, for example, who's never heard of plant-based universities before, all these tiny little details that don't really matter. If we can make something understandable and digestible in a headline, then we should do so. And then moving on to talk about journalists themselves. I think the single biggest mistake that like activist quote-unquote groups kind of make when they try to engage with press and with media is they assume everyone thinks the same way as them, and everyone finds the things that they think are interesting and they think are relevant as well. That's really, really wrong. To be news, you have to think like a journalist and reverse engineer the story. What you need to do is you need to research a particular journalist or a particular outlet to understand what is their editorial bias, what is it they're being asked for. It's something if you're in a conversation with a journalist, you can literally ask them, what stories does your editor want you to write about this week? What topics does your editor want you to write about this week? And they might come up and say, environment in that case, brilliant. They might come up and say, I don't know, we really, really want to do a story about equality in higher education. We're like, okay, equality in higher education, how do we turn plant-based universities into something that fits that brief? Think like a journalist, not like a campaigner. That's how you make news. Another thing on journalists, and this links back to the simplicity point, is the idea that journalists are incredibly, incredibly busy people. They're getting 200, 300, 400 emails every single day. how do we stick out from other people? That's not by waffling, it's not by going on when we're getting to our point later. It's by being direct, it's by saying, I've got this is important because all of the reasons that we listed before, because it affects lots of people, because it has a famous person involved. Maybe it's an exclusive story that we're offering to them. So reverse engineering stories so they fit to journalists rather than fit to our perception of the world. That's how we do that. So these two things come together and we need to understand a really basic principle called hooks. And it's pretty much the same as what Kevin was talking about in his outreach workshop the other day. It is your one sentence, like one liner that can describe your story. We think about simplicity, think about reverse engineering. We need to have something to hang our story off, something, the fishing analogy is a very non-vegan one. The idea like we've got a fishing rod and a hook and the journalist is a little fishy swimming around. This is going to be on YouTube and I'm going to get cancelled for this. I'm trying to reel in, trying to catch the journalist with the hook. That's how to think about it. A few examples of these, just to get thinking before we go into a bit of breakout activity plant-based universities have done in the past is passing a student government motion for 100% plant-based catering. Anyone want to shout out why that might be a good hook based on what we've talked about making news earlier? What features of a good hook are in there? What makes news news? So, University of Cambridge Student Union votes for 100% plant-based catering. What's in there that makes it interesting, makes it news?
It has a lot of the qualities, so it's got something that's quite controversial, but it also has legitimacy with the title of University of Cambridge, and it is also relevant that's happening right now.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's controversy like that 100% plant-based is designed to stir up conversation. University of Cambridge, very famous institution, very relevant to people as well. And certainly, if you're trying to push the story, for example, to people in Cambridge, it affects them as well, doesn't it? Moving on to another one. In 2023, we released an open letter that was signed by about 900 academics and celebrities. So the headline, the hook, is 900 plus academics sign open letter calling for 100% plant-based university catering. Anyone want to shout out? Why is that news? What makes it a good hook, as it were? Celebrities, yes, exactly. So, these names might not mean loads to people outside the UK. We like Chris Packham, MBE, has signed this letter. Etienne Stott, gold-winning Olympic medalist, signed this letter. Politicians as well, that sort of thing. We had lots of local councillors sign the letter as well. Another one. So this is another Cambridge one. Cambridge team are really good at doing this, so I'd encourage you to chat to them as well. So I can't remember which Hall of Cambridge what it was, but it's like formal dinner at University of Cambridge interrupted by students demanding 100% plant-based catering. Anyone again shout out? What makes that a good hook? What makes it a good introduction to a story for someone? Controversy. Again, brilliant. Again. And the last one. Was there something to say, Malcolm?
I didn't hear what was the story.
So, formal dinner at University of Cambridge interrupted by students calling for 100% plant-based menus. The last example I've got is a piece of research that we collaborated on a think tank with last year. So it's like, research reveals plant-based menus are 80%, it was like 30% cheaper, produce 80% of the emissions as omnivorous menus in university canteens. And anyone take a stab at saying why that might be relevant, why that might be eye-catching.
Affects a lot of people.
Yeah, it affects a lot of people. There's the idea of, there's a bit of controversy in that as well. So there's good data, good facts. So I think I've spoken enough already, basically. So what we're going to do now is we've got 4. Is break into 3s or 4s now and take a sheet of flip chart paper and start thinking about as many possible stories that we could create in our plant-based universities campaign, maybe using the ones I just mentioned as an example. And a really helpful way for me, as I was saying earlier, to think about how do I make a story is this reverse engineering work. So maybe start by listing all of the newspapers and all of the online publications from local all the way up to national that you could think of. And think, okay, what kind of story You know, what kind of hook could I say that's going to get me into local media? What kind of hook could I produce that could get me into regional media? What kind of hook could I produce that gets me into national media? That's very much possible. So if we get into those groups of 3 or 4 now, I'll come around and give everyone a flip chart paper. We'll take 10 minutes and then we'll share back what we came up with. Is that clear enough for everybody, or anyone who can explain that? Cool. So bring it back to what we're trying to do in plant-based universities. You know, getting an article in a newspaper is great, but if it doesn't have an impact and doesn't move the campaign closer to success, then it's a little bit of a waste of time. So the uni newspaper focus is a really good one, because this is something that people in university, I won't take questions right now, people in the university who are actually reading this, it actually has a tangible impact on them. You know, if you can maybe get, like, you know, they ask you to write an opinion piece, for example, and it's going to be read by students who you want to get on your site. Maybe you have a vote coming up. It's a really good place to put your point of view across in a really low effort, relatively way that a lot of people can see. And then, as I said, this relationship, almost like symbiotic, between like local press and university press. Is how a lot of journalists on a local and national level get their story, is by looking at what other journalists are writing about and seeing if they can take another angle on it. So local press might feed off university press, and the national press might feed off local press. So we've got a fuckload of headlines and hooks here. We need to figure out, how do we put this into practice so we can communicate our story in the way that we want it to be seen. And the primary way we're going to do that is through something called a press release. In true Blue Peter fashion, here's one I prepared earlier. So I'm going to run through this really, really basic structure. This is something I use for every press release that I write. So take a picture, write it down, whatever you need to do, get this in your head. Now,
is it a pipeline or what is it?
This is a structure of a press release I'm about to run through my head. So this is how I begin my press releases. It's like how I structure it, the categories that I want to fit everything into. So first of all, headline. That's what we've all been doing here. How do we distill our story into like one sentence, like 10 to 15 words that gets the point across? And something I'm going to touch on a lot today is that when we're engaging with the press, when we're engaging with the media, it's a mistake to think that we're building up to a crescendo. It's like, you know, that kind of idea. We start slow, we build, we build, we build. It's the opposite way around when we're talking to press and media. We front load everything, basically. Because you might have something really, really important down here, and if it takes a journalist 5 minutes to read, they're not going to do that. As I said, they're really, really busy people. You get the important stuff here. So headline. I always say, I mean, it's a little bit unethical, perhaps, is like, if you're not pushing the boundaries of truth, your headline probably isn't catchy enough. You need to be right on that boundary. You need to be like, just about telling the truth. You know, like one step further, there's a little bit of a white lie. That's the kind of attention grabbing we want to be doing. It's easy if you have a very good story. If you think your story is meh, you might have to push it a little bit, see how far you can go with it. Next thing is a photo. We live in a digital media age. If we do not have good visual content, it's very, very difficult to get coverage. So whenever we're thinking of a story, we also want to be thinking, what's the content that can go along with it? Do I know Max, who's a great camera person, who can do a lot of photos, a lot of video for us? If not, make sure you've just got someone who has a really good phone and an eye for a photo. And the idea basically is that just from a headline and a photo, a journalist could probably write the story if they tried hard enough. They wouldn't need any of this if they just had these two, the idea of really, really front-loading everything in a press release. The next is when we start to get into a little bit of detail. And the way I encourage people to approach this is that a press release is communication of truth through our prism and our lens on the world. Communication of truth through our prism or our lens into the world. So what we're going to do at the beginning is 3 to 5 bullet points to get the basic facts of a story across. So it's the what, when, how, where, why questions. Get those answered. Again, this is like building, so with these 3 things, journalists could write the story. Again, they wouldn't have to read any further if they didn't want to. And then after that, this is when we can start weaving in that narrative, weaving in our perspective on things, the way we want to frame things for people, doing the storytelling in an introduction, kind of 25, 30 words, 2 or 3 sentences to really kind of start painting this picture, start elaborating on what we're doing. And then we get to quotes, which these are really, really, really important. So a lot of this press release the journalist is going to read to understand what the story is about, and then they're going to write it up in their own words. Sometimes they'll take this verbatim, sometimes they'll just copy and paste it because they're lazy, and that's brilliant, but a lot of the time they don't. They're going to put it in their own words with their own editorial bias, the way that they want to portray the story. The things that you know in here are going to get taken, copy and pasted exactly as they are quotes. They can't change them without asking you. It's very, very illegal for them to do that. So what we want to do is make sure that these quotes are really, really hard-hitting. They really, really get our point across in an incredibly forceful way. And the way you do this is by emotional, values-driven communication. I'm going to talk a bit more about that later. Facts are wonderful, but facts don't convince most people. We want to hit on their values, we want to hit on safety, security, sustainability, all of these sorts of things, and weave our facts into those. And then on this as well, what is in the quote matters, but who the quote is from matters almost even more. So, I can't remember who it said, if we get quotes from legitimate people or from famous people, they are gold dust. Because then you can imagine, in the newspaper it says, Joaquin Phoenix said this. People trust Joaquin Phoenix more than they trust a student from buttfuck middle of nowhere on an issue, basically. So, that's our quote. Then, as we move down, we can start weaving in our extra information. What are the studies that we're relying on? University of Oxford, University of Harvard, Cambridge, and so on. These really reputable sources that, again, back up our vision, back up the story that we're trying to tell. Bring in a bit more detail here, but again, this is from most important to least important. Then we can launch into another quote. Let's make sure this quote is from someone who's from a different demographic from the first quote. How we kind of game the media system where, a lot of newspapers, a lot of online outlets are really pushing to represent unrepresented voices right now. So if you have your first quote attributed to a white man, for example, maybe you want this quote to be from a woman of colour as well. And that might open more angles for more outlets to be covering the story simply because of who is being platformed. And we're platforming people who traditionally don't have one. Then we can move on to any extra details. And this is, this is an optional one. You might have run out of space at this point. Any, extra facts, anything that helps to weave that story a little bit further. And then this one. So many people forget this, is your notes to the editor. And this, in academic terms, is your references. If you're saying, this study said this study said that, you need to provide a link to the study in your notes to the editor. You need to be able to evidence any fact claims that you're making. And also here, contact details so people can get in touch with you after. It might be that a journalist reads this and is like, fuck, this is brilliant, I want to talk to these people more because I want to write more about them. And then they look at it and they're like, I don't know how to get in touch with them. That's really bad for us. Also helps us build a relationship with a journalist if they can get in touch with us as well. Sorry. And then, as a structure, our basic press release. And a few kind of do's and don'ts for this, I've kind of brought them in already. But what you do want to be aiming for is all of this, 300 to 500 words is what you want to go. So you want to aim for 300 to 500 words for all of this. Again, journalists are really, really busy people. They want to be able to whiz through this. Another do is, again, I can't stress it enough, front load the fuck out of anything you're doing with the press. Really, really important to do that. And then your don'ts is don't waffle, don't go off topic, don't bring in more points than is absolutely necessary. I spoke about simplicity earlier, and that's true here again. Through all of this, you really want to anchor around 2 or 3 key points that you're hammering again and again and again to get into the head of a journalist. And then earlier, I said what we're doing here is a transmission of truth through our lens or our prism into the world. So don't claim things that you can't prove are true. Don't say something here if you can't provide a link to something showing it down here. Yeah. This is a first attempt, basically. The first press release that I ever wrote probably took me 3 or 4 hours to write. And then the more you write them, the better you get at writing them. And now you get to the point where it's 15 minutes, bam, 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 bam. I'm done. It's great. And then I'm always on hand to help with writing these, help proofreading these as well, making the suggestions as I've been making, going around. And we've got a press release now. We've got our story here. It explains everything. We need to find a way of getting it to journalists. Very quickly, there's kind of 2 main ways of getting things to journalists. The first is emails. You can find contact lists on news and media websites. news and media websites that often have the contact lists for all of their journalists as well. So you just email it out to them, and making sure, again, I'm going to repeat it again, because it's really important, is front load things. In the email header, you don't want to say, oh, I'm from plant-based university, so I've got a story that maybe you're interested in. Journalists is not going to even open the email, are they? What you want to do is put in block capitals what your headline is. That's how journalists see, oh, that looks interesting. And also think, what time of day am I sending this? I'm not sending it at 9 p.m. at night because the journalist is clocked out. They're at home if they're not working the night shift. What I always try to do is send it somewhere between about 10 to 9 in the morning and 10 past 9 in the morning. That's when they're opening up their laptop to look at their email for the first time. The email that you've sent is at the top of their inbox at that point. Really getting me really thinking really in depth about how we're getting into journalists on email, and then writing in that email. The way that I view it is there's a show in the UK called Dragon's Den. Is there an equivalent show in other countries?
Shark Tank.
Shark Tank is like the US one. It's like the idea is like you're going, you're pitching something, you're selling them your story. That's what we want to do in the email. So when they'll go in, we've got our press release, we want to pick out the hook. We want to explain the hook in a couple of sentences to them. Say this is why you should be covering this story. I think it's really interesting. I think you're the one for this. And then copy paste the press release below your email, and also give them a link to a Google Doc. Is a really good one, just a read-only Google Doc, not a PDF, because you can't copy and paste out of PDFs. So 2 ways of them getting it, either in a document form or just copy and pasting out of the email. That's way one of getting a story to a journalist. The next one is less relevant now than it was a few years ago, but is Twitter, or X as it's now called. This is the platform that journalists live on. Again, less so now because of Elon Musk. This is where lots of journalists get their stories from. Most journalists will have in their bio on X, DM for stories. DM, if you have a source. This is how they get it. And then again, is it's that same structure of like we're selling them the story in their DMs. So you can imagine like they're looking their Twitter DMs, they can only see like the first 4 or 5 words of the message you're sending to them. So again, those 4 or 5 words, that's the start of your headline. It's the interesting thing. That's how to get stories to journalists. And then after that, it's about building rapport with them, hoping they reply to you, and then you can follow up and follow up and follow up, offer them more and more and more, make them think. And make them feel like they're the most special person in the world. So I do a bit of love bombing on the journalists, basically, to get them on your side. Anyone keen to share back to the group? What makes good social media? What's a good example of social media? Another group, another person, and what are they doing well? Yeah?
We talked about Duolingo, because their Instagram presence is, I think it's great, because they have all the different accounts from different countries, and they are interacting with each other. And also, they're not posting a video and then it's done. They're always reacting to comments and
cool. Yeah,
engaging with it.
It's a really important one. Yeah, Duolingo is an example of interaction, which is a really important one. I think it's something that I learned from Sophie, actually, is like posting and then staying on the account for at least 15 minutes, I think it is afterwards, yes. Interacting with all of the comments, getting it onto stories, getting it into like your university team's channel, putting it into one of the plant-based university's bigger channels, so you get lots of reactions, lots of comments on it straight away, and then interact with all of those, like build the relationship as well. And it's but the point that we'll really emphasize later is like this kind of like gaming the algorithm kind of approach. If the Instagram algorithm, for example, sees there is this post, it's got a lot of engagement happening on it. Okay, this is good. More people should see it. That interaction element is a really good one. Yeah. No.
Also, related to interaction, I would say identity. It depends on how you're gonna interact. We had a website, it's Veganuary, where it's just more populist. Everyone can join and take a look. And there are also multilingual influencer. She's trying to be friend with everyone, interact with everyone, and she's at her 20s, so people are also at their 20s trying to interact with her. Also, your community, what was your name of it?
I'm part of Unique Animal Rights Club. So I think what was very important for us, we have a logo, and I think it helps with the identity. If you have one specific logo, which is attractive or which is eye-catchy, attracts attention, and that logo should not be changed constantly, so that you have a sense of identity when you join a community.
Yes,
And
that's
then-
one that I didn't even have on my list. Is like people when they see your icon come up, they should be able to know what the account is from the icon, from like the profile picture.
Yeah,
Got there eventually. And I think Mel, you made a point. This like personality point as well. I think especially in like social movement culture is the idea that like we shouldn't platform like individuals. It's about the movement. It's about the movement. That's a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology. We don't relate to like so much as like organizations or movements as we do the people who are part of those organizations and movements. So personalizing the social media, giving a platform to people in the team who are going to speak to the camera, who are sharing a little bit about them and also a little bit about the work they're doing as well, humanizing the face. It gives someone who, when you see them on a university campus, you can go and you say hello to them. Hi, I want to talk about plant-based universities with you as well. It's a really, really important one. Yeah.
We had actually two examples. One is like from the left party, Heidi Reichlein in Germany. She is like a strong person, and she has a personal account, and I follow her and not the left party's account. So it's like, yeah, it's the personal aspect is very strong. And also our president of Austria, he also has it's a very professional but also kind of personal account, and you can follow the person.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think that the single best example of this is Sophie and Laura's Instagram account. Does anyone follow Sophie and Laura on Instagram? Yeah. Let's go into Instagram and search Twinzels. Twinzels is like such an amazing Instagram account they have. They blend plant-based universities with their personalities, and it's like it's just so compelling. It's brilliant. Yeah. Anyone from this side like to share anything that makes good social media?
We didn't have like concrete examples of like groups on social media, but like the thing we talked about which like are nice aspects was like first when you're actually like showing what you are doing. So when you're doing banner painting or when you're doing an outreach store, like do a video of, for example, the people setting up the table or the people actually painting painting the banner, so that people see that like people are behind this and we are active and we are doing something and you can join us.
Yes, exactly. It's like behind the scenes stuff as well. It's like what you said at the end there. It's like people can be part of this because people are this. It's not like a faceless organization. Again, it's like engaging. There's something there for people.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, sure. I think like linked to that is the importance of like telling the story of what we're doing as well, because you can imagine you have one post where you like post a photo and you say, hey, we did our outreach today, or you could post a video and you can explain what you did, you could explain an interesting conversation that you had, and you could explain how you felt before and how you felt after. And those are two like very different things, and people feel a lot more connected and feel a lot more like personally engaged to the story that's been told rather than just the outcome. So yeah, I think this kind of like behind the scenes and storytelling is really important.
Thanks. So we've got a lot on here about the kind of, like the content itself, like, what's actually going to be there. Anyone want to add anything more on the technical side of what makes good social media? What's even before the content? Go get
High saturation.
Yes, exactly. High quality photo, high quality video, if you can get it. You don't want just some like fucking like janky ass like Nokia brick video on your social media. Nobody wants to see that. Maybe some people want to see that.
Unless it's a runny Facebook video.
Chantel.
Like shortness of the content, like very short videos get more views.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's like, again, the simplicity point we were talking about earlier. It's like reels. Like the average time someone stays on a reel, don't know, Jeff, you might know it off the top of your head, it's probably something like 3 or 4 seconds. Do you know, Declan?
A call to action.
Yes, call to action, very clear one. This links, but again, moving into more kind of technical aspects, like captions are really, really important. Spend some time thinking, what information do I want to get across here? How do I want to get it across? I want people to be able to get involved. Yeah.
I think the actual structure as well of the site, making sure things are easy to find. So if you have other links to other socials, or some people have like the trees as well, they might have their website.
Yes, exactly. That is fantastic. Does anyone want to tell me why it's a terrible idea to put in an Instagram caption the link to another website? Just shout out at me.
It's not clickable.
You can't click on it. So link trees in the bio as well. Really, really good one, especially on Instagram. And Linktree is another segue into a really important one. So you have a list of everything you want people to do. It's a really, really good suggestion. Yes. So we'll go to Nicholas first.
I think also about finding a balance between like informational posts and more fun posts.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Even with like catchy music.
Balance feed. And yeah, your last point there, trending audio as well. Really important ones, like nerding out these like really, really small details. I think you have that.
So two things. First is, instead of passively saying, oh, we are open to join or something, write active phrases like join us, and then put the link instead of just writing we are open to join in something.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's like nerding out on the call to action kind of stuff. It's like you don't want to use the passive tone when you like for someone to do something. It's using the active tone. It's like, we're doing this. We want you to be a part of what we're doing.
And the second thing is, if we have like two posts, like fun post and information post, there could be a specific color format. So then if it's an information post, if someone is interested in information, just by the color cue, he knows I have to click on it. Or if someone is interested in fun, he doesn't skip through.
So again, it's great we're getting into lots of details here. So yeah, like color schemes, making sure there's consistency. That someone looks at your page and they're not like, all right, why is this post up here? It's like neon and it's in Times New Roman. And why have I got a post here? It's like ombre and it's in calligraphy font. There's like consistency running through the social media as well. A few other things to add to this is like use of hashtags as well. Hashtag plant-based, hashtag vegan, hashtag university, these sorts of things. It gets the people who are interested in those topics driven to the page as well. I think creativity is kind of something that we've been like on the edge of, talking about social media accounts from the personal people, influencers. It's like, think outside of the box. I'm really proud of saying this actually. It's like the most liked social media post on the main Plant-Based University's Instagram account that's not about a win is a shit post. It's a meme. I love that. Like creativity. Like I think there's a shortage of humour in what we're doing as well, and that humour can get people in the door as well. Don't underestimate the impact of it as well. Sorry, I think I saw a hand over there, Carla.
And another thing is that having a hook, especially if you real, can be super helpful. So don't just start with the story straight at the beginning, but like get something that hooks people. Like a short, can be very short, but like a tease of the end of the story and then start the story.
Yeah, that's great. It's great that the PBU Utrecht account is one of the really, really good Plant-Based Universities ones. If anyone wants with inspiration, look at the Utrecht account as well. And then a few other things is collaboration posts. Find other societies or other groups, your university, who you can cross post with, because then it's going to our audience, their audience as well, reaching beyond that bubble. There's a bit of like the dynamic aspect there. Then a few other kind of like real technical points is the time that you're posting. You can do the analytics on Instagram to see when are your followers most active. That's something you can get, isn't it? When are your followers most active? If your followers are most active at 8 PM, what time should you post?
8 PM.
8 PM. If your followers are not active at 9 AM, when should you not post?
9 AM.
9 AM. There we go. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Yes, it's not been kind of brought up and said as someone who's on the inside, or Max as well.
I think like the main thing, especially now, is authenticity. That I think a lot of people are now using ChatGPT and stuff like that, but it's really kind of easy to spot when it's been used. And we already said personal and stuff like that. I think things which are very open, emotive, and personal always perform way better than AI slop. So it's more important. It would be better to have one post per week where you're really being authentic than trying to do 5 posts per week where you're not authentic at all.
Yeah, exactly that. There's kind of 2 points in there. There's that authenticity one. Yeah, ChatGPT. Very easy to use. And it can be good for a starting point, and then you can build on what ChatGPT has given you. But you can tell when something's been written by ChatGPT. It's like either the really long colon or the rocket emoji, because I know you use ChatGPT for that. And then the other point, like quality over quantity as well. So if you can get out, if the choice is between like 4 posts that are really, really poor quality, caption is bad, there's no call to action, and one really, really good post, and let's always go with that one really, really good post, and then we can build on that in the future. Let's build a solid foundation for the work we're doing. Anyone got anything else to add? Examples with social media before we move into a little bit of design and brainstorming?
I don't know, but like things people want to see. Like there's, for example, an activist rights movement in Austria, and they post a lot of slaughterhouse footage. So I don't like to watch that page, even if it's important. But I like to watch nice stuff. Because I think, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's like if you want to make successful social media, I think you need to put on nice stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Things people want to see that they're going to click on. It's like going back to the point earlier I made about press, and we step out of our shoes into the shoes of a journalist to reverse engineer a story for them that's got our message in. And again, with social media, out of our shoes into the shoes of the students at the university. How do we design posts? How do we design an account that is going to appeal to them, whilst obviously also getting our message across? Now, if we get 10 followers and we're just speaking to the same 10 people who are also in our core university chat, we've probably done a bad job of social media. Just turned into an echo chain. We want to reach beyond that and get reaching out to more people. If I had anything else to add onto that. And just kind of one last point before we go into a little bit of a group activity, is I spoke a little bit about the algorithm earlier, particularly on Instagram, about gaming it, and this is something that is just constantly changing. So what I'm saying here might not be relevant in 3 months' time, might not be relevant in 6 months' time. So I really would love to see trial and error, A/B testing things, seeing what works for you, what works in your university as well coming out of this, and then sharing that back into the group.
I just like one more idea that we did in Utrecht is that we combine sort of the networking with the social media, and we have a lot of airlines, we have a green office, we have lots of student associations related to sustainability. So we went to them and we asked them, hey, so we have one student association that is already, their catering is 100% plant-based already. And we went to them and we interviewed them, and that way we networked, we made a connection, and we had a collaborative post, and we could sort of suck on their subscribers. So that's also a good idea, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, beyond just collaborating or explicitly, is also reaching out, getting shares, getting stories, building that actual relationships with the group that can be strengthened through social media. So we're going to finish off this kind of section on social media now. But, let's say you've done everything we've talked about already really, really successfully. You've made news, you've done great social media, and then, I don't know, if you're in the UK, the BBC wants to get in touch with you. Give me a national media broadcaster in another country. I don't know many of them. What's the French national media broadcaster? Or a big French television network? News, they get in touch with you, and they want to speak to you. We have incredible opportunity to get our point across. Can you guys move a bit further away? A bit disruptive. We have a unique opportunity to get our point across, like us speaking in front of hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people. So we want to be prepared to get that right. And this is going to be a little bit of a crash course in that. And I will say at the very beginning, usually the spokes training is like a 6-hour training. I'll make a day out of it with people, but the basics can really be distilled into a few simple points, and I'm always there to support people before they go into interviews as well. Again, as I usually do, take a big step back and talk about kind of broader principles and ideas first about how we communicate to people. This is essentially what Tobias was talking about yesterday, is how people live their lives. It's this narrative reconstruction loop, where people have a belief, and that belief shapes their actions. That action then shapes their belief. We've been doing all of this since we were tiny, since our parents were raising us. That's why it's so hard for people to change a lot of times, because this loop has been happening for years, for decades, for people. Now, the question is, how do we change that? And as Tobias was talking about yesterday, a lot of the time, it isn't by coming and smashing in with something completely new and foreign to people. What that does is if we put something that's completely so outlandishly outrageous to this loop in, is the loop rejects it straight away. Everyone understands the principle of cognitive dissonance. We all know about it in vegan outreach. It's a perfect example of when someone tries to put something too new into this loop. So what our job is to do something called narrative disruption. And, you know, with Tobias, he's talking about, you know, like shaping people's actions, so that changes their belief. But what we're going to talk about here is inserting something that can help change people's beliefs and shape their actions. We want to introduce new ideas and scenarios into people's heads to do this. The way that I kind of talk about it is, imagine you're playing with some Lego. Has anyone got like a really young like niece, nephew, sibling or anything that's like 3, 4, 5 years old? They're playing Lego with them. And like they've built a house out of Lego, if you can call it a house. And the Lego house is like, it's really, really shit. And you can see it's really, really bad. If you came in and you told the toddler, your Lego house is awful, I'm going to knock it down, I'm going to rebuild it completely, what's their reaction going to be? Tantrum, probably. But what if we come in and we say, okay, yo, that's a nice Lego house here. Have you thought about like putting this brick in here, or this little brick in here to make it look, you know, make it look nicer? The reaction is going to be maybe a little bit more positive because you're not destroying what's already there. You're manipulating it tiny, tiny bits. You're adding fresh pieces in, fresh perspectives in, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So let's talk about values-led communication as how we do this. Is fundamentally, I really, really believe this, like deep down, humans all care pretty much about the same things. Safety, security, our family, where our next meal is coming from, feeling happy, feeling heard. Like everyone can agree, like that, those are good things. So what I want to do is tap into these like almost universal sets of values in what we're doing. So for example, you know when we classically, you know, as Kevin was talking about outreach, it's like approaching someone, it's like, you know, would you like the university to be more sustainable? Do you want cheaper food at the university? It's like tapping into something we know they believe in already. And then we present them with a new scenario of like, if the food was plant-based, it would be cheaper. It would be more sustainable. It would be tastier as well. So we're using their existing framework of things they think are good, positive things, and saying, this thing fulfills all of that. We're not asking them to fundamentally change the things they care about. We're not asking them to change the things that they believe in, their identity. We're presenting them with a new scenario, a new situation that makes them think, hang on a second, if I believe this, then I should want that. I should do that. And that's how we want to communicate when we're in live media interviews. It's like tapping into the values that we think the audience has. You know, for example, if you're going to go on, does everyone have a rough idea of what GB News is? Or Fox News as well, just like super right kind of television programs. You don't want to go on GB News and start talking about left ideology. It's going to get shut down straight away. The viewership is going to think, oh, this is like a bunch of woke hippie students doing this. But if you go onto GB News or Fox News or something like that and you talk about national security as a topic, suddenly you're speaking the language of that channel, of that viewership. By the same token, you know, if you're going onto, you know, morning television, it's mums watching it whilst they're making breakfast for their kids. It's someone driving to work, you know, just listening on the radio. It's a different demographic. We think, what does this demographic care about? How can we speak to their values? That's a little bit about how we communicate. And then to break it down a little bit further to help us do that, I always separate it into what am I going to do before an interview and what am I going to do during the interview. So before the interview, I was kind of getting into it there. Information really is your friend here. So asking the news network, you know, the producer that's reached out to ask, you know, whoever to go on the show, all right, can you give me a brief? Who's the presenter for this? What's the format? Is it a one-on-one conversation? Am I going to be put in a debate against someone else? Have you got a list of questions you're going to be asking me? If you know all of these things, we can prepare for them ahead of time. It's very normal just to push and push and push for that information to get it. Then what we can do from that is create our key messages. As I was saying, identify the channel, the presenter, the viewership. What are the 2 or 3 things that we want to repeat and get across over the course of the interview? It's much better to say one thing 10 times than 10 things one time. Repetition is key to getting this across, doing this thing and getting it into people's heads. Then practice is your friend as well. This is where I can come in, or anyone in your team can come in, and we're going to go into that very, very shortly in some practice interviews. So like, think, how does it sound when I say this thing out loud? In my head, it sounded brilliant. When I try and get it out, yeah, that sort of thing. I really like work at crafting these messages. So then we've got, you know, what do we want to say? What do we want to get across? Lots of people think, all right, that's enough, that's great. I don't have to do anything else. And they forget one of the most critical aspects of an interview, which is body language. Now, if you're someone like me who unfortunately has genetically just got a resting bitch face, you just need to work on it. You need to learn what your face is looking like to other people, learn how to smile, learn how to look engaged. As young people especially, people are going to look at us as someone who is not legitimate, you know, who's not an authoritative voice on something, just because of our age. So what can we do to counteract that? Make sure our body language, our posture is good, we're upright, we're maintaining ourselves open, being conscious of that. Also, this goes into our dress as well, especially if you're on the television. You don't want to rock up looking like this to an interview on the television. If you're a man, you want to whack on a shirt and trousers and shoes. You know, if you're a woman, at least a blouse is good. So you look presentable, you look like you belong in that space. And then one incredible trick for body language. I'm going to look like such a dickhead when I do this, but I promise you it works. So what you want to do is you want to find like a toilet cubicle or a really small room where, like, if you reach out, you can just about touch the walls with your hands and your legs. And what you want to do is, like, I'm just going to pretend I'm in one now, is like you want to reach out, like reach up here, reach down there, try and touch the walls, reach out with your legs, reach behind you as well. Now, what you do when you do that for a couple of minutes is you've told your mind, fill the space that you are in. So then you walk out of that room, you go to the studio, or you go to sit behind your laptop if it's a video interview, and your body is telling you to fill the space. You project confidence into that space. That helps you mentally as well. Not back down in front of whoever's in front of you, who's probably going to have tricky questions for you. Who's probably, most of the time not 100% on your side. And you're projecting confidence into that space and owning the space as well. You're coming across as someone who knows they belong there because they're worthy of being there, because they have important points to make. So it's not just what we say, it's how we say it, and it's how we act when we're in the interview as well. So during interviews, there's a really important one that you see loads of activists who aren't media trained do, is they get asked a question and they're like, oh, I have so much to say, I'm going to speak really, really quickly because I need to get this point across. And they'll spend 10 seconds like speaking at light speed. They'll speak like this, I want to get this, and I want to say this, and I want to say that, and this is really important, this is really important. No one understands that. After 10 seconds, their mouth is moving faster than their brain is, and they pause, and they're like, what do I say now? So what we want to do is when we get asked a question, take a second, take a deep breath, take a sip of water, and think, all right, where do I want my answer to this question to finish? What is my end point of my response to what is being asked of me? And then it's asking, how do I get there? Don't jump in without knowing where you're going to finish. That's a really key thing for answering. And then on the content of our language, I struggle to translate this outside of the UK, the average literacy of someone in the UK, what reading age people are in the UK, what age of a child could they be expected to understand words up until? Is that an okay explanation, or Declan, have you got a better explanation of what reading age is?
So if you were to measure how well someone reads, that's how you'd expect like the average. Well, if you went to like school at that age, that's how you'd be expected to read at that level, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, does anyone want to guess what the average reading age of an adult in the United Kingdom is? Max? You're a little bit too low.
I think 12 or something like that. 10.
So the average adult in the UK is 10 years old. So what does that tell us? We want to use language that a 10-year-old would understand. Or if you're in Switzerland, maybe like a 20-year-old perhaps. So that's the kind of language you want to use, something that's accessible to people. If you have to explain what something means in a live media interview, you've alienated so much of the audience who now think you're just an overeducated, entitled university brat. Use the language that the people who are watching the show are going to be able to understand. And then beyond that is like, you might think that what I'm telling you is like very, very strict and I'm turning you into a robot. But I'm going to go back on that. I'm going to say, be a human. You're going on there as your full self as well. Values-led communication rather than facts. Weaving in your personal story. You're talking about, why is this important to you? Why should this happen in the context of it? Maybe you have your career mapped out, or maybe you have your life mapped out. Maybe you want to get married, have kids, have a stable future. Bring all of that in. This is a story that you can tell and people can think, actually, like, I want that as well. So I should want what they want as well, because that's going to give me, my future. That's going to give me what I want. Humanize yourself as well. And then the last point I think is probably the most important one here before we go into a little bit of practice, is be a goldfish if you're in an interview. Like, inevitably, in this, whether it's an interview or even further, things like outreach, whenever you're speaking to someone, you're going to make mistakes. That just is going to happen. Humans are not perfect. So what you need to do is just forget those mistakes straight away. You have permission to forgive yourself. One sentence in a media interview is not going to change the outcome of the world. One sentence during outreach isn't going to change the outcome of the world. So be a goldfish, forget it, and then you move on. Just take it as it comes. Any questions? Anything I've said before we go into the exciting bit of all of this?
You mentioned about filling the space and body language. Is there any knowing hand gestures and stuff, is that bad? Is that good?
Speaking with your hands is great. Yeah, like making a point, like forcing it in to people. It's really good. The one body language gesture that you should not do. Does anyone want to guess what you should not do if you're in an interview? No.
That. Or this.
Cross your arms. Exactly. As soon as you do this, you've communicated, I'm not open to you anymore. And for us, when we're young, it gets perceived as this person's having a strop. This is not what we want to do. Yeah, go ahead.
Something that our former chancellor used to do, Sebastian Kurz, in interviews is always say, I have 2 points. And then start talking, and the interviewer couldn't interrupt him because there are 2 points. And if they interrupt them, they get bad emails and bad news or whatever. So that's also a good trick.
Exactly. Like the dealing with the interruptions is something that, very people say. It's like you can state very quickly at the start. And also, if you get interrupted, you take a couple of approaches, depends on your kind of personality. First of all, is just continue speaking, speak over them. You're the one who was speaking in the first place. You've got every right to be there. This works mostly for men, I will say, as you can even imagine. And then on the other side, it's like a bit of a moral high ground approach. Is you let the interruption happen, you let them finish, and you politely say, I hadn't finished making my point. You've invited me on here to talk about this. I'd like it if you respected me enough to allow me to share my point. And you've instantly made the presenter, made the host, made the other person look bad. Because we all agree as a society, interruptions are bad. We shouldn't do them. Take one more question before we go into that.
Yes, I was just wondering, when there's a discussion or interview partner who wants to argue more about the facts, we are not professionals, we're sometimes not professionals in nutrition, and we just want to get out of discussion about facts because we can't know everything. Is there an option to just go back to the emotions, like what we want the future, or what is your
it's an interesting question. I think first of all, what I'd say is we're not going in there to beat the interviewer or to beat the person opposite. We're there to convince an audience. That's our focus. But to do that, sometimes we do just need to have 2 or 3 killer facts in our back pocket. So make sure you're prepared for the interview. And then a strategy for when this happens is something called A, B, C. It's called acknowledge, bridge, communicate. So you acknowledge the question, you validate the question, or what's been said. Oh, that's a very good point. Or I understand what you say. And then your bridge comes in. It's that's where you kind of start to segue a little bit away from it. So have you considered this? Or this isn't really the important point. Or actually, this is more important. And then you communicate. You get across the point that you wanted to make. Cool.
Could you say the ABC again?
Yes, acknowledge, bridge, communicate.